and welcome to the Diverse and Inclusive Leaders podcast. This is a show where I interview the most inspirational and thought-provoking leaders of today and unearth their unique stories of diversity and inclusion to help inspire, educate and motivate others to make the world a better place. Today, I am honoured to be joined by the inspiration that is John Barnes. I'm sure all of you know who John is, MBE. He's a Jamaican-born English international football star and manager, and he currently works as a commentator and sports pundit for ESPN and SuperSport. Without further ado, because I could talk about your accolades and everything that you have done, John, forever and a day, but no one wants to hear from me. It's about you, and I wonder, just by way of intro, for perhaps the very few people in the world who haven't heard of you, whether you could give us a little introduction into yourself and some of the great things that you've done throughout your phenomenal career.
Well, I think you've done it all. You've said it all. You can sit here talking about how many league medals I won for Liverpool and goals I scored, but I'm not here to talk about my achievements at all. We're here to do something that could be meaningful. Hopefully will be meaningful, thought-provoking, where people can think about themselves and others. So yeah, suffice to say, I was great. How was that? That's good enough. Let's go to the real business.
You were absolutely fantastic. And what I would love to do is to, if it's all right with you, to talk a little bit about your background and your career today. Obviously, we all know how you came to be where you are, and I know you get asked a lot and are very, very outspoken about the sheer racism that exists within sport and the wider world, and in specific, some of your early days, which is, it's frankly heartbreaking. But I think if we are to look at any flip side here, there is the fact that you serve as an absolute role model and someone who is not even an ounce scared to speak out about issues that matter so fundamentally to our wider world and sport and community.
Okay, well, first of all, I came from Jamaica when I was 13 years old. I was brought up in a middle-class Jamaican family who was fully empowered as a human being. I knew I was worth the same as any white, black, anybody else. So therefore, when I came to England with that attitude and I started playing football and I got racist abuse, it never bothered me at all because I knew I was fully empowered. I was as worthy as anyone, and I can't let ignorant people get to me. Now, obviously, people are different. Some people may feel that, it really hurt them and they suffered from it. I can tell you I never suffered from racism. I experienced racism, but I never suffered from it because it didn't bother me, because ignorant people cannot bother me. That's the first thing. Secondly, and most important, I never even experienced racism. I experienced racist events. And what we have to do is we have to separate racism from racist events. John Barnes on a Saturday at 3 o'clock, a couple of bananas came on the field. That's a racist event, which was terrible. Terrible, and we have to stamp that out. 5 o'clock came, football was over. John Barnes got in his Aston Martin. No racism there. John Barnes went to the best restaurants. No racism there. The best clubs. Fans came up to me. Fans spoke to me. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, John Barnes could go to where any white people went. I experienced white privilege. Because when people saw me, they didn't see a black man, they saw John Barnes a superstar. What John Barnes experienced was racist events, every now and again. But for the 99% of the time, John Barnes didn't even experience racism because I'm John Barnes. Black people every day in their communities, from they wake up in the morning till they go to bed at night, experience racism. And that's what we have to stop. Yes, we have to stop racist events, but the only way we're going to stop racist events is to stop racism. But unfortunately, we're doing the other way around. So George Floyd is a racist event, and we're now outraged, coming down hard on that. And then if we don't see that again from the police, we're going to think that everything is okay because the police aren't killing black men anymore. Whereas the black community will every single day go through racism without people even thinking about it because we don't see it. So, racism in football? No, there are racist events in football. And unfortunately, until we start to target racism, nothing will change.
I absolutely concur. And, to a large part, I think it is, the issues are systemic. I was talking to Sanjay Bandari from Kick It Out, and I know you do a lot of great work with the charity and making sure we kick out racism for good. But this is something that has been going on for many, many years. Now, it is fortunate, from one lens, that it has not bothered you or prevented you from getting to where you are today. But there are many, many, many others who are affected by this, as you say, on a daily basis, and still will look up to leaders who they feel they bone affinity with to see them as role models and to be able to be as strong. But for those who, as you put it, you experienced white privilege, it wasn't an issue at that time. What about how we can utilize individuals like yourself and other business leaders, frankly, who are able to use their power and to use their influence to drive change?
What are they using their power to do? What they're using their powers to do, as Raheem Sterling and Lewis Hamilton are, is talking about we need more black managers in football. We need more black people in the boardroom. How is that going to help an inner city kid to get education? We're doing it the wrong way round. We're doing it the wrong way round. Raheem Sterling, Lewis Hamilton should not be saying we need more black managers. We need more black people in the community to be able to get a job, to get housing, to get an education, access to social care. That's what we need, because we can always elevate an individual out of blackness to become a manager. Did we not have a black president of the United States? Surely things are better now. We've got a black president of the United States. So the answer is not to get the elite black people into positions of power. The answer is to get the people in the community more self-respect, more opportunities. But who is going to say that? Because the black elite aren't saying it. What are the black elite saying? We need more black managers. We need more black people like us to get positions of power. And I say, yes, we do need that. So we do need to stamp out racism in Bulgaria. I don't think racism in Bulgaria is why people can't get jobs in England or people can't get access to social care. But that's what we focus on, because it is self-serving for so many of the black elite to say, I want a better position. And then when I get that better position, I'm going to help you up the ladder by pulling you up. If you create a platform down in the communities for them to climb up the ladder themselves, you'll get many more people climbing up the ladder than we can pull up the ladder. And this has been going on for years. Hundreds of years it's been going on. People say this is a seminal moment whereby things have now changed. We feel a change. Do you not think after the abolition of slavery we said that? And then after the civil rights movement in the 60s we said that. And the riots. And then the first black manager in England. Then the first black captain for England, Paul Ince. And then Frank Rijkaard won the Champions League. Nothing has changed in 50 years, and nothing will if we just keep making token gestures and playing lip service to the real problem. When we see a problem, we then become outraged. But when we don't see the problem, we think nothing of it. So, sorry to interrupt you. Not that I'm interrupting you, because they hear you all the time. They don't hear me. What can John Barnes and Raheem Sterling do to change perceptions? Because we say, yes, Raheem Sterling. I won't say me because my time have gone, and maybe 30 years ago, but let's say, so I'll say, but because people think I'm now criticizing Raheem every time I mention his name, where I'm not, but I'm just saying, even if John Barnes was a 25-year-old international, but I'll use Raheem Sterling because he's current. Raheem Sterling says, say no to racism, wears a t-shirt, says it's wrong. Who is he talking to? Who is he influencing? Manchester City fans may listen to him, right? So if you are a racist Manchester City fan, and please Manchester City fans, don't say you're racist, but I could be talking about Van Dijk, I would have said Liverpool fans. But we're talking about Manchester City and Raheem Sterling because he's current. A racist Manchester City fan who is racist, and he knows he's racist, when Raheem Sterling says, say no to racism, is he going to have an epiphany all of a sudden and say, I am now cleansed of my racial bias because Raheem Sterling had a t-shirt saying, say no to racism? Or is he going to say, I won't be racist to you, Raheem, because I love you, because you're fantastic. But when we play against Man United or other teams, I'm not going to stop being racist to them just because you've said it. But, so, nothing changes there. Now, this is the biggest problem. You're not going to change a racist mind for being racist. Yeah? And if there's 1% who are racist, 99% aren't racist. So does Raheem Sterling saying, say no to racism, and he's speaking to all of the 99% of people don't think he's talking to them because they aren't racist in their own mind or racially biased. So who is he affecting? Because if I was in a room with people and I say, all the racists stand over there, not one person will go and stand over there. And when I say, right, all of you now, and you're not racist, yeah, but I'm going to talk to all of you, we have to stamp racism out. They'll all go, yes, I agree, we have to. But you're not talking about me, are you? You're not talking about us, are you? Because we aren't racist. So who is Raheem Sterling affecting? Because the majority of people say, we're not racist, so we don't have to change. And the 1% who are racist and they're not racist are going to say, I'm not changing. Yes, I'll change the ones you, Raheem. But Raheem, you're going to play for somebody else. You're going to play for another club. And how do you think I'm going to view you? So we can do nothing to stamp racism out. Education in society, explaining to people why it's wrong to be racist, where that idea of racism comes from, how we're all unconsciously biased towards certain groups of people. That is what has to change. Not just paying lip service to the fact that a footballer holds up a t-shirt or a footballer says don't be racist, and we think that that's the problem. The biggest problem is not in football, it's not in the police, it's in society. Because first of all, before we're football fans, members of the police we are members of society. And members of society, all of us, me included, are racially biased based on what we have been wrongly told about different groups of people. Do you think I'd accept subliminally or consciously, unconsciously, a man from China coming to manage a football club here? Or a white man who I've never heard of? Who will I have faith in? Because of what life has wrongly showed me about different people and their group and their different groups and our perceptions of who they are and their abilities and capabilities.
John, I absolutely concur with pretty much everything that you have said there. And I agree, it's absolutely about the education of the community and the grassroots. And there are some people that we're never going to change. Therefore, to a degree, forget about them. Let's work on the people that can change and can be brought along with the journey. But something interesting that I'll revert back to you that you were saying earlier was about, say, black privilege and those who are in positions of power and they're still not necessarily being changed. Absolutely agree to an extent. But I do think having those...
There's no black privilege. There are black people with white privilege. A black person in an elite position who isn't being stopped by the police, who isn't looked upon as if he's going to rob you. When you're going to a shop, people don't look at you as if you're going to steal something. That is not black privilege. That is white privilege that black people like me and the elite and superstars and celebrities on the go. So it is no such thing as black privilege. That is a misnomer. It is white privilege that sometimes we do, and maybe Chinese people, if they're elite and they're actresses or they're musicians. So it's all white privilege.
Yes, but my point is those in senior positions who have made it to that level, they are benefiting from that privilege and must ensure that they are using that power for good and not, to your point, just paying lip service to it. Because as you say, and I see this in boardrooms all the time, I'll go into a boardroom to talk to business leaders, no one in there has ever said diversity and inclusion and belonging. I don't believe in that. They'll nod their heads politely and I'll think,
tick the box.
Exactly. And it is and it's not about that tokenism, but it is so incredibly fundamentally important. The amount of youngsters that I have spoken to who have said there's no one who looks or sounds like me, therefore if I can't see it, I can't be it. I think that absolutely is true. But diversity, inclusion and belonging across all areas, not just black, white, Chinese, whatever we are from the outside, but the invisible diversities as well. Actually, the higher you go up, whether it is sport, business in particular, you know, the higher you go up that hierarchy, the fewer and more far between there are. And so it's this multifaceted, complex issue.
But let me tell you it is multifaceted and complex and nuanced, but let me tell you the problem with that. I can't see it, so I can't be it. So for 99% of black kids, what they will see is Obama, John Barnes, manager, Beyonce. They'll see that, but forget about sport and because we can sing and we can dance. So forget about that. We're talking about intellect. We're not talking about Usain Bolt. Because Usain Bolt, I'm not saying Usain Bolt, but somebody like Usain Bolt, who is the fastest runner in the world, may not even be able to read and write, but he's going to be the fastest man in the world. So let's not talk about sport. I don't like the idea of sporting role model because that is a perception that we can sing and we can dance and we can play sport. So I don't like that idea of sporting role models for us. So I can see it, but because I can't be it because I don't see anybody like me. There is somebody like me. There's Obama. There's somebody like me, a doctor, a lawyer, a businessman. I can see it so I can be it. I can be that. I'm getting expelled from school. I can't even take GCSEs. I can't even get a job. So how can I be a doctor? How can I be a lawyer? How can I be a businessman? And I have lots of black doctors, lawyers, and businessmen when I leave school at 15 because of the lack of education for people like me, the lack of housing, the lack of opportunities. So we might as well tease them and say, yes, you can be this, but you can't even pass a GCSE or an O-level. So how can they be it if there's not an environment to make them be it? So what will happen is that there will always be brilliant ones who get through the net, come from the same environment that they are, one parent family, can't get a job, ninth crime area, I become a doctor, he's done it, so you should be able to do it. Why don't we try and create the environment to help more people do it? Rather than just looking at people who've done it, still not creating an environment to help them and say, because what that does is that then says, you've got no excuse. You've got no excuse because there it is. So let's now, after George Floyd, let's get more black people on television. Let's get more black doctors, let's get more black managers. Then when the inner city doesn't change, people's lives don't improve at all, they cannot complain because what they wanted, we told them, is to see more black football managers. And now you've seen it. More black people on television, as you've seen in the last 2 weeks. Now you've seen it. But what about the real problems that affect 99% of people? That will be forgotten about. And black people won't have a leg to stand on Because all it's going to be seen as is, oh, you just keep complaining. You asked for the police to stop killing people, we've done that. You've asked for a black manager, you've done that. You've asked for Beyonce to get an Emmy, you've done that. Idris Elba got an Oscar. You've got black people on television. What are you complaining about? And I think us, the elite on television, getting Oscars, instead of saying, oh, we got an Oscar. Great, that's what we want. We should say, forget about giving me an Oscar. Forget about giving me a job. Forget about giving me a job. What about kids in the inner city who can't get an education and cannot get... I'm just turning you around here. You can't see my garden, can you? No, you can't.
Vaguely in the background.
Vaguely. I'll take her around my house. 5 bedrooms. I'll take you out into my garden. I've got an acre. John Barnes is struggling, isn't he? I am struggling. Black people who don't struggle, march on Whitehall, march on Downing Street to help me. Because I want 10 bedrooms instead of 5. And I want to have 2 acres instead of 1. I will not do that. I will not do that. And I will not support anybody who does that instead of speaking up for the people in the black community. And I get criticized because people are saying, oh, you're criticizing Raheem Sterling and you're criticizing the black elite, because, you're saying there's not racism in football. And of course there is. But what's more important for us to get more John Barnes and Raheem Sterlings, more importantly, doctors, lawyers, business people, intellectuals, we have to create an environment for the average black person to be able to get a better education. Now, you said it yourself. Education is the key. What education do we learn? What education do we learn? Do we know about the Opium Wars in China, which was a great victory for Britain? Great victory for Britain against the Chinese. That is the same as Pablo Escobar sailing up the Hudson River and forcing America to buy drugs because there's a market for it. And because we've got bigger guns, you're going to do it. And that's a great victory. Moral and intellectual victory against these savages. This is the education we have learned about ourselves, in that the altruistic and benevolence that we have given the world, rather than the truth about us conquering the world and stealing the wealth of the world and making ourselves richer, and then convincing people that we are superior intellectually and morally because we have colonized the world. That is the education we learn. So we can tear down Colston's statue, but Winston Churchill, who was as racist because he believed in eugenics and he believed in the hierarchy of the races and he believed that the white race was superior to every other race, we can't touch him because he's our hero. This is what we have to learn. This is what white people have to learn. Forget about teaching black people about their history and to empower them to say we were great in the past because we invented the whatever a white man we invented and a white man stole from us, to make us feel better, to then say, look what we invented, look what we did, look what we did in history. What are we doing now? What are we doing now? And not only that, it's okay for us to learn that. It's important for white society to learn that how they have got to where they've got to in the last 500 years wasn't based on benevolence and altruism and well-being and well-meaning for the and civilizing people when they go to their countries. It's because of greed and stealth. That's what it was based on. And if they understood that, then they wouldn't feel superior now, rather than thinking that we are superior to everybody else.
And I think, the truth hurts a lot. The truth is uncomfortable for many people to talk about it. And I'm so glad that we are talking about it for what it is right now. I would say that there are so many fantastic white allies and people from all different colours, races, religions and backgrounds that can support this. As a side note, and I'm sure you've read... One second. We have lots of white allies. You know who our new white ally is now? Go on.
Here's Morgan. Have you seen him? Have you seen him on television? He's our new ally. He's our new ally, talking about Colston going in. Whereas 6 weeks ago, he was talking about black crime, and it's a black on black crime, and black people have a problem, and now he's an ally. Do you really think we've got lots of allies? Or do you think that they're paying lip service to it because now this is what they have to say? He's talking about Colston. All of our white allies are saying it's a disgrace. Did they not know Colston was a slave trader? How many more slave traders do you think they are? Do you want to come to Penny Lane, where John Penny and Samuel Pepys, so many people were involved in it, but now all of our allies, now I want to ask you something. Were you offended when Piers Morgan spoke about Prince? No, he's not a prince, Peter. Did you see that? When he spoke about Peter in China advertising milk. And then he went, oh, ching, 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 chong. Did you hear about that? Did you hear about that?
I didn't, but I would find that highly offensive.
Yes, but he said it wasn't offensive. It wasn't offensive. Now, of course, because it wasn't in the news. Because it doesn't matter. Because Chinese people don't complain. Had it been Africa and Piers Morgan had gone, oh, look at him, and they're going, ooga booga, ooga booga, what do you think would have happened?
Mm-hmm. There would have been absolute outrage.
So do we have to wait for people to complain before we see what racism is?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But and apologies for interrupting there, John. But I was wondering. So when it comes to allyship And of course, there's always going to be people that pay lip service to this. And I can tell when I'm speaking to someone who is paying lip service to it. But would I rather them feel that whether they believe it or not, on one hand, does it matter? Because as long as they're taking action to take the right sustainable steps towards educating our future generations of leaders, be it business leaders, be it celebrities, we know, you and I know, who is full of you know what and who is not. But do you think, because I kind of fall in the camp where I think, well, to be honest with you, am I ever going to really change intrinsically how you feel about this? Therefore, I don't have children yet, but when I do, would I enjoy my children watching outlandish, awful comments publicly, or would I rather them, and again, there's no right or wrong answer, I'd just love to know your thoughts, or would I rather them be watching celebrities saying and doing the right things, but being forced, even though internally they might not want to, making change to do something good and to put action in there? I'm not talking about the fluffy stuff, but when you can force it through, what is the right thing? Because there is, I mean, I don't know what the right thing is.
What action are they doing? Shall I tell you the action they're doing? Because of course, Phil and Holly said they're going to learn about Black history and they should learn about Black history to empathize. Are they really going to do that? I'll test them in 3 weeks' time. So what have you learned about Black history? They're all paying lip service. What action are they doing? Apart from pointing the finger at somebody else. Look what's happening in America. England, Black people in England, feel grateful that you're not in America. Because in America, that's happening. So we're marching here for George Floyd. Yeah. We've had 5 people killed in Britain in the last 10 years in police custody. Were we marching for them? Have we mentioned them? Do we know who they are? Sheku Bayu. Have you heard of him? No one has. Sean Reagan.
Heard of him.
We haven't, no. But we've heard of George Floyd because we've seen it. And not only are we seeing it, we're now, everybody, going down on one knee here because racism is terrible in America, isn't it? And of course, they're all saying, of course, in England, it's not like that, is it? Because we don't see that. And that's a danger. That is a danger. And I won't be a part of that. I won't be a part of that. So I will not be a part of endorsing society or celebrities on now television, and they're our allies now, and they won't be our allies in 6 weeks' time when this dies down, and they weren't our allies for the. So why are they now all of a sudden our allies? Because in this time, they're now coming out of the woodwork to then say, "Oh, it's terrible." Lee Francis, do I care whether Lee Francis makes fun of Craig David? He's making fun of Craig David. That is not a negative stereotypical view on all Black people. Now, of course, in Little Britain, when they do the Black Ooga Booga woman, I agree with that. I agree with that. Should people now, gay people, then say, oh, because he should do Elton John? No one's mentioned when he does Elton John. Why don't gay people get upset? But Black people get upset when he does Michael Jackson. This is not a negative stereotype on Black people. It's a negative stereotype, possibly. He may think it's funny, some do, on Craig David and Michael Jackson. And this is a danger as well, because then if we just criticize everything as being racist, you will then alienate, as we are going to do, we are going to alienate a lot of what you call our allies. If we then say, let's go and tear down Winston Churchill's statue, because he was a racist. Oh, but you can't do that. Colston, because Colston's okay, but not our real heroes. And then when we're going to go into Oxford University and the library, Oxford University, and lots of universities where the money had come from slave traders and owners of slaves, what are we going to do then? That is not the answer. I don't care. Keep all of those statues up, but give us the people, kids in the inner city, a better education, better jobs, better social care. That's going to make a difference.
Absolutely. And it's really interesting there that you point out about this almost being, and you didn't use this terminology, but it's almost the next fad. And that saddens me a huge amount, that you see these things as, oh, Black Lives Matter, then what's the next thing in a month? And as you say, people showing their support, but only showing their support for that very small amount of time. You know, how can we make sure, and I know we've talked about education, I'd love to get onto that piece as well, because I think absolutely educating our youth and making sure that we give opportunities to those who come from underprivileged backgrounds, and we put metrics against it. You have to have metrics, because words don't do enough. Words just don't do enough.
But we're not even highlighting it, because we highlighted George Floyd, Bulgaria racist football fans, Black football fans who you can't get a manager's job. That's what we're highlighting. What about the invisible knee that's been on the neck of the Black community for the last 200 years and continues to be on the neck? Because we don't see it, we don't think it exists. And that's how we make a difference. Instead of highlighting the George Floyds and the lack of Black managers, John Barnes getting the manager, continue to highlight every single day, like we do here. We see it on television with George Floyd. Substitute George Floyd for the black community and have that same empathy and feeling towards the kids who aren't being given an education, and that's when we make a difference. But we don't. We don't even mention that.
It absolutely starts with education. And I was chatting with Paul Parker, and he's absolutely on the same page. His thoughts were that it is about the parents, and I would agree with that to a big extent, but I think it's much wider than that. It's
much wider than parents. Leila, let me tell you, we talk about, my parents weren't raised, I grew up. We're influenced by what we see around us. We're influenced by the way the world treats us and treats other people. We're influenced by when a white terrorist goes and kills 42 Muslims, however they were in New Zealand. It is like a blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy turns into a terrorist. They individualize him. But if it was a Muslim, it would be all Muslims are terrorists. It doesn't work when, up to last night, there was a young girl in Yorkshire who accused the Muslim groomers of grooming her. She's turned out that she was lying, but people don't believe she was lying because, of course, Muslims are groomers, because that's the narrative. Jamaican yardis, Nigerian conmen. You don't hear about Christian pedophiles, do you? You don't hear about Christian. If you're a white Christian and you're a pedophile, you're just a pedophile. But if you're a Muslim and you're a pedophile, you're a Muslim pedophile, and Muslims are groomers. And this is the problem. This is the subliminal messages that we get all the time that affects us, that we don't even understand. And for people who won't acknowledge that it even exists within them, they're the biggest problem. The biggest problem is not Derek Chauvin, not the racists who go and throw bananas on the pitch. The biggest problem are the 99% of people who don't believe they're racially biased. They're the biggest problem.
Absolutely, because we all exist with bias, all of us.
But we don't admit it.
Yourself.
Of course, I do. I say it.
We all have bias, absolutely. But do you think? Sorry, I just
on your going to war. If I'm going to war, am I going to go to war? Would I rather go to war with a skinhead or a woman? Oh, I can't say that because I'll lose my job if I tell the truth. So we all wait for somebody to slip up and say a skinhead, and then go sack him, fire him, because don't let him work again because we all believe in equality. We don't, and until we realize that we don't and start to understand why we don't, because of what we have been wrongly told about different groups of people, I don't blame racists. I blame the society that makes them think that way, the environment. And that's what we have to challenge, not the individuals who get caught.
So to what extent do you think the media are responsible then? Because I would agree, I think there's so many different factors on our kids and other impressionable individuals. But, a lot of this comes through subliminal messaging through the media and messaging from various other different places publicly. What are your thoughts around that?
For hundreds and hundreds of years, it is propaganda, be it through the media, from the Magna Carta, when the average person, the poor people, were told that give us barons and lords more power against the king and we'll help you, nothing changed. The French Revolution, it's a revolution of the people. The people in France haven't got any better. The American Civil War, everything was about a group of elite people wanting more power from the kings or the government, getting more power, and nothing changes for the people, but convincing them is for their own good. We won't get on to Brexit, but exactly the same thing.
Let's not mention the B word.
Let's not Brexit the B word.
So let's talk about solutions, because talking of George Floyd, of course, that is what's in the press the most at the moment. If we are to try to look at this with any kind of silver lining that would be there, is that we must cling on to this as a movement. I'm not saying I agree with you, replace George Floyd for the community, and you're halfway there, right? But as a movement, and you look at the Me Too movement and what has happened, and then what the actions have come out of that, it starts with education. But what else, as a shout out to business leaders and whomever is listening, what can we do? Because I absolutely fundamentally believe that every single person on the planet can make a difference. And it could be a micro difference, but guess what? Lots and lots of micro differences make a big difference. So what can we do on the positive side?
Leila, I'm not trying to trip you up. However, what do you know about the Me Too movement? Tell me what you know about the Me Too movement. I'm not trying to trip you up. I'm just going to make a point. What is the Me Too movement about?
I understand that you're not trying to trip me up. I suppose my point here was...
Okay, no. Shall I tell you what I know about the Me Too movement, and tell me if you knew this? Yeah?
Okay.
The Me Too movement was started 10 years ago by a black woman called Tarana Burke to highlight the injustices of young black girls in the inner city being raped, being abused. That's the Me Too movement. 2014, a Hollywood actress coins that phrase, takes it over and says, Me Too movement, because I'm being sexually abused by Harvey Weinstein and elite men. So the Me Too movement is now about Hollywood actresses and singers and famous businesswomen who had to go through the issue, which it is in high industry for businesswomen, and that is what it becomes. The original message is lost, which is what it was supposed to be. Same as the taking a knee. Taking a knee was about the injustices, that it became a thing about American footballers being able to take the knee. This is being hijacked by an elite group for themselves. So everyone goes to the Me Too movement, and not many people know what the Me Too movement was, because it's been hijacked by an elite group of people who have improved their own lives, whereas for the young black girls in the inner cities, nothing changes. And that is 10 years ago. So now we're talking about George Floyd, and we think that, okay, it's about George Floyd, but it's not. And this is my gripe. My gripe is these are words that people use because they have been commandeered by an elite group of people with a platform to then talk about how they can make their own lives better. Whereas they should have a platform to be talking about how to make other people's lives better.
I agree, but we can't tar everyone with the same brush, I would also say. And it goes back to what we were talking about before. Look, we know when people are paying lip service to things, and we know when people are doing this with enlightened self-interest, and we know, but at the same time, when there is a platform there to talk about, and look, I get the point. I'm not going to argue that point because I don't know enough about the intrinsics of the early day Me Too movement. When I think Me Too, and I'm sure many who are listening in think Me Too, they think sexual harassment and Harvey, you know, I don't even like saying the name because it makes me feel ill. I, as many others, I'm sure, have watched the Netflix series, and, you know, I mean, it's horrific, but
I agree with
it just touches the surface of what this is. But when there are platforms there, what would be better or worse, I suppose, is what I ask. And again,
what would be better is for the platforms to be used for 99% of people, not for the 1%. And the platforms that are being used now is George Floyd for the police, and then for black managers to be given jobs, and we need more black people in the boardroom. Raheem Sterling says when he can see somebody in the boardroom, he knows things have changed. He never said when I can see black kids get a better education, and when black people get better jobs and better housing. He says when he sees a black man in a boardroom, he knows things have changed and things are getting better and they're serious. To elevate a small group of people into positions of power, which will not help the black community. Now, if he was to say that, that would be more impactful on the black community, not on one or two black people who then may get in the boardroom. And we have to do both. And I've been hearing this for so long, Leila. We have to do both, but we're not doing both because we are doing both. You know who are doing both? The people who work in the inner cities and the councils, who haven't got a voice, haven't got a platform, no one knows who they are striving to go to government to say, we need more funding. No one's interested. You know, doing kind of GMB. Phil and Holly aren't interested in that. No one's interested in that, so they could do nothing. That's what they're doing. So we are doing both, but they can have no impact. The other group are the superstars, the elite, who are talking about we need more people like ourselves. So we are doing both, but the wrong people are doing it. We need ourselves to talk about what's more important for 99% of the people. When Nelson Mandela, our heroes, Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, did Nelson Mandela say, as a lawyer in South Africa, and he had lots of work, because being a black lawyer in South Africa in apartheid, did he say, yes, need more black lawyers, that's what we need? Or did he say we need freedom for the little average black man? Did Martin Luther King say about Rosa Parks can get a bus? Did he say we need more black people with cars to be able to drive down the motorway to go to work? Or we need a black person to be able to take a bus? That's what we need. Did Gandhi, who was a lawyer, brilliant lawyer in the temple, did he say we need more Indians in the temple? Or did he say we need equality for the poorest of the poor back in India? And these are our great heroes who don't talk about themselves or people like them. And that's not what's happening now.
I can see your point, but we absolutely need both. We absolutely need both.
But we don't have both. We don't have both. I agree with you. We need both, but we don't have both. We've got too much of one and not enough of the other. Very few of the other.
So less talking and more action.
But there's lots of action, isn't there? Because we want more black managers. It depends what you consider action to be. And it depends on what you consider action that will really make a difference, fundamental difference to be. Because of course there's lots of action. Didn't we just throw Colston's statue in the river? There's a lot of action. What's that going to do?
And this reminds me of Desiree Barnes and the video that went viral recently. I don't know whether you saw it. Desiree
But I don't know the
Barnes.
name, but I mean, if you tell me what happened in the video, I might know it. So I don't know the name.
Yeah, so Desiree Barnes is someone who I admire greatly. Huge amount of respect for her. One of the most outspoken women I've met. She was on the podcast. She used to work for Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, and a video went viral recently, which is public, so I can talk about it, where she was absolutely tearing down verbally those that were taking action for Black Lives Matter in protests by tearing down the streets and causing a huge amount of damage where people live, where communities live. And her point was, yes, Black lives absolutely matter, and it winds me up no end when I see people saying, but all lives matter. It's like, yes, we were never saying, we're saying all lives matter, but we need to take a stand for our friends who are Black or mixed race or whatever.
The ones who are being more disenfranchised.
Absolutely. And that means education.
Listen, let me explain it this way for people to talk about Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. If there are two kids on a playground, one kid, being black or white, is being attacked by the dog, and the other one isn't, and you go to the aid of that one, and someone say, well, that kid matters as well. I go, yeah, but that kid's not in danger. This kid is in danger. This kid's in immediate danger, being disenfranchised. It doesn't matter anymore, but this kid is in need of more help. So the whole idea of all lives matter is counterproductive.
Absolutely. I chose not to comment on some of the things that I saw. We put some
posts out. I can imagine, because I mean, you're afraid of getting criticized. And I'm the same. You know, that's why I get criticized, because unless we say everything is racist, I get criticized all the time by a lot of black people who say you're an apologist for racism, and then white people say you say everything is racist, because you have to take everything in its you have to look at it from an individual perspective. Some things are, some things aren't.
So I disagree with that point. I wasn't scared about being criticized or how I would come across. I thought when I would, hypothetically, so I put out a post around, and we do a huge amount around D&I and B and how we can take action, which I won't go into now. But this particular post was around BAME. I actually don't really like that terminology, but it was around BAME, because I think to a degree BAME also, it's what's beyond BAME.
You know, BAME is I'm as close to white people.
Yeah, and so am I. I was adopted by white British parents. I have had a wonderful life that I'm so lucky to have had. But I, as many, many people in England, in the world, we all have privilege to an extent. No, we were working class. You know, my mum worked for the NHS. My dad, had a number of different jobs working for entrepreneurs. But we need to recognise that we have had privilege. I didn't have to pay bills when I was younger. Things like this. Anyway, sorry, get off the point. But the point was, I put a post out, and it was around racism. And anyhow, there was lots and lots of people commenting, and some who were outlandish, racist remarks. Some of the things were disgusting. And yes, I could have started arguing back with them, but the feelings that I had and that of the team were, why would we waste our time on people that don't matter? What's the point if someone's going to say something which is so outlandish and disgusting and despicable? Why get sucked in? And it's really tempting, don't get me wrong. I was there fuming, and I called up my best mate who's from Kitts and Nevis, and she was like, oh, I'm just absolutely furious and everything like this, and you could go on forever and a day being furious, but why am I going to waste my time replying to someone who it's unlikely I'm going to change? Why would I not spend my time on someone who is able to make a sustainable difference, whether that is implementing an employee resource group within their organisation, or whether it is opening up opportunities at early stage level for those in their careers who have come from underprivileged backgrounds and don't necessarily have a university degree or have been to a certain school. I would rather put my time into that. So that was all my point. Anyhow.
But that's you. And I use myself and Ian Wright as examples all the time. What was right for John Barnes is when racists want to throw bananas on the field, not only did I ignore them, I laughed at them, I even felt sorry for them because I felt superior to them because they were being savages as far as I'm concerned in Neanderthals. That's not right. That's right for me. What was right for Ian Wright was for him to maybe kick and scream and go and fight them. That's right for him. So when you're saying, what's the point of me doing that because you would much rather, that doesn't mean that somebody with a different character who fights back is wrong. That's what they have to do. And that's the point I'm making.
Absolutely.
It's not a binary decision of you either do this or you don't do that. You're either right or you're wrong. It's very, very complicated and nuanced, particularly when you're talking about race. But that's not that's the point I'm making, is that people just say that you either say everything is racist or you say nothing is racist. That's why we have to look at it individually, and we get criticized because people, particularly in this day and age where we are very easily offended. And I mentioned the point about, people talk about Craig David and Trisha when Lee Francis but satirized them. But when he satirized Elton John, who's gay, then isn't that the same thing? Or satirized, I'm sure, I don't know whether he did somebody who's Chinese or somebody. So we are very easily offended. And can we tell them that they shouldn't be offended? Because everybody is going to be offended over something. And if you're offended over something, when we then go, because I'll use this as an example, RuPaul's Drag Race. I don't know a lot, but I know, India. I know a couple of trans women, and she says in her circles, they hate RuPaul's Drag Race. You know why? Because RuPaul's Drag Race, and of course now it may be different, but 15, 20 years ago, she felt that is the way that society sees them, as a man dressing up as a woman. And she is not. She's a woman in a man's body. So therefore, when she dresses up, because she's dressing up as a woman because she is a woman. Whereas we don't see that. We just see them as being trans. Trannies they used to call them. So therefore, when they're now laughing and joking on RuPaul's Drag Race, and everybody goes, oh, isn't that fabulous? Isn't that fabulous? I remember 30 years ago when you had blackface, when people were saying the same thing. And now here we are 30 years later saying blackface was wrong. So in 30 years, are we going to say RuPaul's Drag Race is wrong because it disenfranchised trans women and made fun of them? Whereas now, what are we saying? It's only a laugh. Come on, it's only a laugh. Which we were saying about racism, about blackface, about black footballers being abused. It's only a laugh. Get on with it.
And society must evolve, and it will evolve. And, we have come, I was going to say we've come a long way, but I think in many ways we haven't.
I call it devolution.
Devolution.
You say evolve, I say devolve.
Yes,
evolve.
But when you look at things such as, legality, it was illegal for if you were gay or LGBTQ plus to get married. So certain things have changed and gone in the right direction.
Yeah, you can change laws, but that doesn't change people's perception of those people. It doesn't change people. Slavery has been illegal for how many years? Theft and murder has been illegal for how many years? Has that worked? Does nobody steal and murder anymore because it's illegal? The law can change nothing. It has to be perceptions. It has to be perceptions.
It has to be both, though. It must be both.
But once again, both. But it's not being both. It's being one. And that's how we get away with the thing. When I say this is what has to happen, or it has to be both. But we're doing one, and we've been doing one for thousands of years. Now, I'll tell you why I say devolution. Race or racism. Yeah? Racism as we know it didn't exist 600 years ago. You could have a black Roman general. He wasn't seen as a different race. Race was about ideology. It was about citizenship. And it didn't matter whether you're black, white, Chinese, whatever you were. If you bought into that ideology of that particular region, you were the same race. For me, that is what it should be. The British race should be people who are from Britain or who come to Britain and become British, regardless of whether you're white, black, but it's not. The race is now based on skin color. And for the last 400 years, why it was, is because in the Enlightenment period, when all of a sudden man's individual rights came into being for everybody, because of course, in the 1400s in England, kings, white kings, and their white serfs were different races, but they were both white. Now, when the Enlightenment period came, when we said we have to treat all human beings the same, that's what God says, the individual man's rights, regardless of whether you're working class or not, how can you enslave and treat people like this? You then had to come up with a group of people who were different to you, where it says in the Bible, or it's said by geneticists, anthropologists, and the brightest minds in the world, with eugenics, of which Winston Churchill was one, and Adolf Hitler, then came up with this lie that people were different races because they were black, they were Mongoloid or whatever, and they also had characteristics to those races. That wasn't the case 700 years ago, 600 years ago, but to legitimize enslaving, colonizing, capturing people's lands, killing them, when well-meaning white people in your own country will go, you can't do this to people. You can then say, look, they're not people like us because scientifically, genetically, anthropologically, in the Bible, it says they're different races. And you call that evolution. I would rather go back to those days when your merit was your character, nothing to do with your color. But because of our ego, we convince ourselves it was terrible back then. Look at us now. And our ego says to us, this is the change. George Floyd is a change. Because I know history in the past, you've had seminal moments like this, but no, because I'm around now, this is the change. You don't think those same people were saying that 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 years ago, saying this is the time of change. The abolitionists, this is the time of change. We shouldn't be so egotistical to think we're any different to people in the past. People aren't any different to Colston. They would have been exactly, those people throwing these statues into the sea. Lots of white people were there. 300 years ago, they would have been slave traders or wanted to be slave traders. The majority of people thought nothing's wrong with it. I would love to be that to make some wealth. And now here we are thinking he was unique, and he wasn't.
So two things. One, ego is the enemy, absolutely. And the second thing, really powerful stuff that you're talking about, John. The one piece that I want to pick out there is absolutely when you strip away what's on the surface, colour of our skin, whatever, everyone is a human being with a beating heart and a soul that means something. Forget about whatever's within the Bible. Forgive me, I am actually a Christian, but it is.
We know that. We know that. But what have we learned for 400 years? Subliminally, unconsciously, that has seeped into our very fabric. So I'll hold a teacher. You ever seen the Champions League matches where you go along the line and these footballers go, say no to racism, say no to racism, say no. Oh yeah, they really mean that, don't they? They really feel that. They really feel we're all equal. It's paying lip service. Exactly as what we're doing now.
So John, action, because I'm conscious of timing here, and I know that I'm very lucky that we are doing we're doing a group conversation in one of our virtual lounges soon with Paul and David Grevenberg and Sanjay Bandari. But I'm conscious of our time today, and I also want, because I think today has been, this podcast has been one of the most powerful podcasts I've ever done. And I say that and I really, really mean it. It absolutely has. It will send people off thinking. And I would love for you to share what you now feel that business leaders and whomever is listening in to this podcast who believe truly in diversity and inclusion and belonging, what they can go and do to push something to change.
While we're talking about business, what can business leaders do to change people's perception? Yes, you can give black people, Chinese people, women a job and then say, yes, we're inclusive. But what's happening with 99% of the people where we don't change our perceptions of them? That is what we have to change. You're going to say, we have to do both. Well, I'm saying, forget one for now, which is what everybody's doing, because we've been doing that for 100 years. Let's try the other. Let's give the other 100 years, saying we don't need any black business leaders. We don't need black managers. We don't need black people getting Oscars. Let's give the black community, 99% of people, an opportunity to get a good education, to get a house. And then maybe in a few years, as they rise up, we'll have many more black leaders. So we have to do both. We've not been doing both for 100 years. Please just give me one opportunity. Give me 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, the millions that have been spent in trying to do the other. Let's try and do the other. Let's try and do the other.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you so much.
A pleasure.
I'm scared to ask this now.
I'm
going to ask it anyway. It is off subject, but yeah. It is something that I'm going to push this onto the team, because I know they'll be listening with intrigue.
But
on a positive note, because I think we've had such a powerful podcast, and I hope you're not going to be annoyed with me for asking you about this. Okay, the rap that you did. Yeah.
Which rap?
Which rap? The most famous rap that everyone calls it as being the anthem. They want it to be the anthem. Let me tell you what it was called now.
Oh, you mean England song, you mean?
Yes.
You mean the England song, World in Motion? Or the Sugar Hill Gang
rap? Where your rap was. So it was the World in Motion one, but it's where your rap is in the middle.
The England one?
Yes. Well, you can do both
so
or either.
Do my rap piece.
Yes.
No, the Sugar Hill Gang takes 10 minutes, and I haven't got that long. So I'll just do a quick rap. Are you ready?
Yeah, ready.
You got to hold and give, but do it at the right time. You can be slow or fast, but you must get to the line. They'll always hit you and hurt you. Defend and attack. There's only one way to beat them. Get round the back. So catch me if you can, because I'm the England man. And what you looking at is a master plan. We ain't no hooligans. This ain't a football song. 3 lions on my chest. I know we can. We're playing for England. There you go.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate it. It's been an honour having you. Before you go off, sorry. My name is Leila Mackenzie-Delty. You've been listening to Diverse and Inclusive Leaders podcast with the phenomenal John Barnes. If you're affected by anything at all on today's show, please get in touch. You can check out all the show notes and any further information at www.darglobal.org/podcast. Look forward to seeing you again very soon. Thank you so much for watching the Diverse and Inclusive Leaders podcast. Please do feel free to hit the like button below, Or if you'd like to receive future notifications, do ping the notification bell here at the side. If you're interested in the audio version only, you can find it on the following streaming platforms. Any extra info and descriptions will be in the links below. Look forward to seeing you soon.